Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the year 2026. I think the last video I published in the year 2025 was on the legendary tier British battleship HMS Incomparable, so it's only appropriate that we would begin the year 2026 by examining the ship yet again. But don't worry, I've got a fresh angle to attack this match from. Now, you might have seen this battle because it did happen on my last stream, but I wanted to do a little post-battle analysis on it in order to more accurately and fully explain the build. Take a look at the minimap in the upper left-hand corner and observe the concealment number for HMS Incomparable in this battle. That's right, it is 10.1 kilometers, the lowest concealment that you can achieve on any battleship in this game, an absolutely absurd and frankly overpowered number that allows you the ability to outspot even cruisers. So, if, something like a Hindenburg that's spotted at 12 kilometers is giving you broadside, it's not even gonna know you're there, unless it's got a friendly destroyer revealing your position before you shoot your main battery guns. Absolutely ridiculous, I know, but in order to achieve it, you've got to give up literally every other aspect of your commander build that you might otherwise use on a battleship. You might, for example, want to spec into the accuracy of the main battery guns, but that's not going to be possible if your goal is to achieve this stupid 10.1 kilometer number. How do we achieve this stupid concealment build? We've got to use John Jellicoe. He's the universal commander for the Royal Navy in the same way George Dewey is the universal commander for the American Navy. And there's only one skill on his skill tree that's relevant here. I'll show you the build. We've got Kondo and Azerlane Sovetski Rossiya as inspirations. And then in the second row of skills, we've got Look at Me Now. As you can see from the rest of the skill tree, literally nothing else is improving any other aspect of the battleship except for the concealment. Nothing for the main battery guns, and yet, there against the Yamato's broadside, we still managed to hit a citadel and do 25,000 damage, and the follow-up salvo is going to be not quite as impressive, because I think Yamato turns out somewhat, but it's still going to be a lot of damage. So even though we don't have anything speccing into these main battery guns, and they're operating with their totally base parameters, they can still get the job done. It just seems to me that the dispersion is going to troll you from time to time, and there's going to be a couple of bum salvos. In fact, you'll see a number of those in the last sequence of this game. So we've given up everything in order to spec into this concealment, and I think we're going to have to talk about the numbers to elucidate why it's possible. HMS Incomparable has a base concealment range of 13.3 kilometers, and then we've got, between the concealment mod, Kondo, Rossiya, and the Look at Me Now skill, we've got 4 things speccing into concealment. Now the numbers are as follows. Concealment mod gives you a 10% buff. Kondo, when fully maxed at rank 16.4, gives you a 6% buff. Azerlane Sovetski Rossiya, 4% when fully maxed at 16.4. And then finally, Look at Me Now, 6% when fully maxed. If your instinct is to take all of those numbers, 10 plus 6 plus 6 plus 4, and add that up to 26%, that's not how buffs work in this game. Instead, what happens is the base value of 13.3 is buffed individually by each of these things. So it's really like 13.3 times 0.9 to account for the concealment mod, then times 0.94 twice to account for Look at Me Now and Kondo, and then times 0.96 to account for Rossiya. Doesn't matter the order in which you do it, altogether it adds up to 10.1 kilometers. Whereas if you actually took the base value and then multiplied it by 0.74%, by adding all the percentage-based buffs together to 26, you'd get 9.8. but that's not how the percentages work or how the buffs work in this game. So that's why we're at 10.1. That was a little bit of a question when I was having this discussion with some other players, I think in Aaron's stream chat, actually. That's where I came up with this build, was in that stream chat, just discussing it with other players. And a couple people wanted to see it, so hopefully this is giving you what you want. But if we look back at Jellicoe's skill tree, look at me now is really the only thing that's of any relevance to our ship in this battle. The other skills we've got selected certainly don't hurt the Incomparable, but don't do anything significant to improve it. In the first row, we've got Contact is Imminent, which gives us 5% torpedo speed. So, like I said, certainly doesn't hurt, but I don't think you need 5% extra speed on these torpedoes because you're probably going to be launching them at close range anyway. We're certainly going to be doing that later on in this battle. And then we've already talked about the second row being Look at Me Now, the key to this build. The third row of his skills, we've got Velocious, which gives us a speed buff of 5%. Helpful, but not going to make or break the outcome of a battle. And then in the last row of skills, Reaching Out XXL for a little bit more main battery range. And then in the legendary row, Fully Packed for some extra consumables. Probably fully packed is the most valuable thing you can get out of this build, to be honest, besides the concealment buff, because then you've got an extra heal, an extra engine boost, and an extra sonar. But yeah, this is the stupid concealment build on John Jellicoe. Now, in order to give you the sort of steelman case of why you would want to use it, well, 10.1 is a funny number, but there is legitimate value into building into concealment for your battleship. This is a topic that I've explained in great detail a number of times over the years that I've covered this game, but I think since we're discussing this absurd concealment, it's worth mentioning the benefits of it once more. I'll give you a sort of the Cliff's Notes version, but when you think about your commanders and your build, you have to know that using a commander and using certain skills does change the way your ship performs, often in significant ways. So I don't want you to think that I am minimizing the importance of a good commander build. I'm not trying to do that. But my point here is that when it comes to a battleship, it seems to me the meta, if you can call it that in this game, is to spec for as much accuracy as you possibly can in pretty much every case and every battleship build. And you can do everything you want to the accuracy. You can put on Cunningham, Ezerlane Scharnhorst, or Iachino, whoever you want. You can stack as many accuracy inspirations on top of one another as the game will allow you to do. But it's going to be somewhat irrelevant if you don't know how to position your battleship properly. What matters much more than how many accuracy inspirations you can stack on top of each other is where do you put your battleship on the map in order to access enemy broadsides and prevent the enemy from pushing. That's the main role of the battleship in my mind, and concealment, speccing into that, helps you do it because it means you're not spotted as soon when you need to push in, and so therefore you can get a little bit closer to the action without getting focused and stopped on the way in or losing all your HP. Conversely, if you're pushed in too far and you're getting focused down by a number of ships and need to retreat, the concealment also helps you with that. And then destroyers, the bane of any battleship main's existence. There are battleship mains out there who believe destroyers are uncounterable and impossible to avoid. That's not true, of course. You see, we're dark here right now and completely unspotted. Our concealment is 10.1. We know, since we're unspotted, even though we can see small and out here, that there is no destroyer within 10.1 kilometers of us. If we were not spec'd into concealment, imagine we weren't even using the concealment module, and we had 13.3 kilometer detect, Incomparable's base. Well, at that range, If we're spotted at 13.3 kilometers, then obviously we know a DD is within that distance. But if we can lower that value to 10.1, that has a couple of implications. Number one, if we're unspotted and then suddenly spotted at 13.3 versus suddenly spotted at 10.1, that means there's a lot less places on the map that the destroyer responsible for the spotting could be. And so in that way, we can more accurately triangulate its location by just observing our surroundings and knowing our concealment value. We can also know that if we're unspotted versus spotted by a destroyer, that we're either in danger range of torpedoes or outside of the danger range. And that allows us a little bit more freedom to move accordingly. This is how, to some degree, I've gotten good at anticipating torpedo launches from enemy destroyers. I build into the concealment so I'm spotted much later, and then if I am detected, I know that I'm in torpedo range of the DD, and I have a better idea of where it is. So I know what part of the map to angle against in order to avoid incoming torpedo salvos. These are the main reasons to build into the concealment on a battleship. And I'm not saying with HMS Incomparable that you should totally forego everything else for this stupid John Jellicoe concealment build. But it works. And, well, we're at the tail end of this battle. There's only 3 ships left alive. Now that the enemy herd has been cleared out, it's a lot easier for us to push in and brawl. Even though HMS Incomparable, while it's got all the tools for brawling, is not exactly the most survivable battleship at the tier, with only 70,000 HP, overmatchable bow and stern, gigantic citadel, etc. You really don't want to be doing this kind of move right within the first 3 minutes of a battle. But in the last 3 minutes, well, this is where Incomparable can really shine in a brawling role. You saw the results there against the main with the torpedoes and the main battery guns. Tremendous amount of damage, and then it's Incomparable versus Incomparable for the last sequence here. And this is where you'll really see the downside, I suppose, of this build. If I weren't using the stupid John Jellicoe build, I would be using Xarkun Nelson or John Fisher for this battleship. Either way, I'd be having Flammable Cannoneer active. I might even substitute Rosia for an accuracy inspiration like Iachino. And in that way, I would have more accurate salvos, but I'd still have a really good concealment down in the low 11 kilometer range, or maybe sub 11 km. I think 10.7 is what I landed on with the actual build that I recommended in my first couple videos on this ship. But yeah, 10.1, it does work, but you see there the results that we're getting against the enemy Incomparable. They're not exactly impressive. The shells are not going right where we aim, and I know that is enough to drive some of you guys absolutely insane. So you'd probably avoid this build for that reason. But still, you throw enough salvos at the wall, eventually some stuff sticks. We're at 200,000 damage done now. Well, not quite. This last salvo has to take out the enemy Incomparable, and then we'll be at 200,000 damage done with this stupid concealment build featuring John Jellicoe on HMS Incomparable. I know we're playing Incomparable SE, but there's no difference between it and regular Incomparable, except for the camo, the SE at the end of the name, and, you know, the kill counter on the ship. Anyway, that is a look at the stupid concealment build with John Jellicoe. Hope you enjoyed the video. Happy New Year. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Give the video a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.